Hello and welcome back to the In Your Mind podcast. You're with Kiz and Breezy. We're changing it up today.
We're changing it.
We're changing it up today.
This is actually my real name, guys. You've been lied to this whole time.
His real name is Breezy, so we're going to go by his real name.
Yeah.
So we're going to be talking about society's expectations, having kids, careers, marriage, all that kind of stuff. This topic did come about through posting on my Instagram stories and seeing kind of what you guys wanted to listen to and what you'd be interested in us discussing. And yeah, so one of the topics that was suggested was society's expectations. So where do these expectations come from?
Where do you think?
I think the expectations are somehow guided through our culture, through our nation, through technology, through socioeconomic status, through
The elites of the world.
I think there's definitely a large array of influences that are constantly playing on our expectations of how we are supposed to live in the world. But I think the real question is, are these expectations beneficial or are they hindering? And I think there are some for each.
What's a good expectation?
I think expectations of yourself. So I would say there's two types of expectations that are external, that come from not you, and then internal, things that you expect of yourself.
But wouldn't you say that the internal expectations come from the external expectations if you haven't reached the level of, I'm going to say, consciousness? Because a lot of what you think about yourself is given to you,
Yeah.
especially negatively.
I think that definitely there's like an awareness component of it that plays upon your internal expectation. But the kind of internal expectations that I'm talking about is things that you've evaluated. Once you've evaluated the external pressures that you have
So you're
imposed upon you, then you can decide for your internal expectations what matters to you and what you can throw in the bin, basically.
Throw it in the bin.
Yeah. And like there's lots of theories of motivation and development that also involve a level of expectation. I think it's kind of interesting to touch on because they come at it through different points. So I'll just touch on two. There's Bronfenbrenner's ecological model. If you've heard of like the micro, meso, macro theory, it's basically like that's where it comes from. But it also includes an exto system. So a microsystem is kind of like a sphere. Like you look at it as these layers that are all part of your self-identity and your development. So your microsystem, the innermost layer, is that layer that's really built from when you're born, and it's your family dynamics. And that obviously plays a huge role in shaping your development and who you become and the expectations that are set on you. Then there's the mesosystem, which is your school, friends, extended family, neighbours, people just on that next level, on that next layer. They're not quite immediate family, but you interact with them daily. And then the exosystems, the next layer, that's basically systems within schools, that institutional level. So it's how the schools run. It's how the institutions that we have run. And then you've got the macro system, which is really that, but on a deeper level, like the deepest level that controls government, international relations, culture, that broader perspective. And basically the theory talks about life as a development through all these compounding factors, and that they all play a big role in shaping how the individual sees themselves and how they develop. But I think this has a lot to do with expectation because it's also a structure that we need to conform to at different levels in order to be quote unquote like successful and reach the expectations of each level. So in the family system, in the micro system, you'll have your role and how you're viewed with your family members and what they come to you for and what they can depend on. Those are those expectations. And then you have like your friends and how they see you, what they expect from you. And I think that is just an interesting point to kind of like refer back to as we like discuss this, that there's that kind of frame and structure that we can look at it. And then, so an old kind of development approach is Freud's psychoanalytic theory, which I feel like a lot of people will probably have heard of. But some of the things that can translate into this topic of expectation is the id, which is basically your primal innate urges, the things that your body needs and craves and wants. And it's an unconscious process that drives you. So it's something you're not aware of. So that could be like food, love, sex, like
survival needs.
Yeah, survival needs. Kind of like if you refer it to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's kind of that survival, those baseline things, but they're unconscious and innate. And then there's the ego, which is kind of like the means of getting the urges. So the id has no way of planning or communicating what it needs
instinct.
or what it wants. But the ego is the mediator. So it basically plans how those urges are going to be fed or what the plan is. And then the superego is the moral compass or something it consults in order to meet social expectation and morals and ethics. And obviously that is something that changes throughout like generations, throughout cultures. Like that's something that's constantly changing. And all three of those really are levels of expectation, but really the superego is formed by external expectation. So it's cool to kind of look at these two ideas and see the levels that expectation is really driven into and that it's really all around us, that it's all encompassing. I think expectations is something that needs a lot of conscious processing in order to evaluate whether it's something that's serving you or whether it's something that is hindering you and hindering your actual desires and wants. And I think there can be a lot of conflict between internal and external sometimes.
Are expectations a bad thing?
I think expectations become a bad thing when there's a conflict of interest, when you want to do something but there's this level of like authority that has control over you that you don't want it to. And if you are constantly giving that your attention rather than your true wants and needs. So I think it's really helpful to assess what expectations have been placed on you. And I think that really only comes about through reflection and awareness of how you're seen in the world and what roles you do have. I was listening to an interview between Andrew Huberman and Lex Friedman. Andrew Huberman was talking about how he meditates and visualizes in the morning through the roles that he has to perform or the roles that he has created in his lives and how he wants to expand them. He was being like, oh, well, one of the roles that I have is I'm an animal. Like I need to feed the animal. I need to work out the animal. He sets goals of how he wants to improve that role and what is hindering his roles. And I think that is a good way to go about it within the expectations that are ruling us internally as well. How am I seen in my family dynamic? What do I want my role to be? How do I want to show up? So for me, I'm a sister. I want to be the best sister I can be. I want to be a good sister. What does that look like for me? what are the expectations to myself that I will need in order to build that role the best I can and keep working on it. I'm a girlfriend. How can I be the best girlfriend that I can be? Where am I at currently? And I think it's important in that respect too, that you're thinking about you and how you can show up, not other people and how they can show up. Because obviously that's important, and it's important to establish your expectations with that person and have boundaries. But I think that's a different conversation. That's not something that you can enforce. The only expectations that you can enforce are the ones within yourself. Yeah, I think that's just an important side note. Like, you can have conversations and say, hey, like this, like to you, Brendan, I'll be like, oh, just even like with chores or something, would you be able to take the bins out and do the washing up? Like, is that okay of a role for you to have? Making those roles clear is helpful. And that is then the set expectation, but then they also need to agree to it, and there needs to be some sort of mediating and understanding between that too.
You've come a long way.
What do you mean?
I feel like that's something you've struggled with a lot.
You mean asking?
Just expectations of people in general.
Yeah. I sometimes struggle to voice my wants or voice the expectations or how I want a relationship to be or to look like. It brings around conflict because I haven't voiced it. So then the other person is assuming things and I'm assuming things and there's no clarity. I think sometimes it's hard to say our truth because we're working through assumptions that are hindering what we truly want. So for me, like learning that it's okay to state your desires and your wants and your needs because it brings you both closer to what you both want. It doesn't mean that by saying what exactly you want, you'll get it. It means that you can have a discussion about it and discuss like why it is that is the role that's best for you or what's the role that's best for them. And it's a discussion and it's like it's a choice.
What do you do when there are expectations from people or a system that you don't have a discussion with on a direct basis? Like what your family thinks of you, what you want to do with your life, or maybe the way other people are carrying out their lives in a way that you don't necessarily agree with, or even just on a wider scale, like laws and policies and culture.
I think it's hard because obviously the structure, like, it exists so that we can try and all collate and collaborate to make society better.
What do you do when that conflicts with what you believe personally, though? Because I think that's what a lot of people struggle with.
Well, I think that there's common expectations and then there's like things that aren't as common, and the things that aren't as common are less understood and therefore people may feel threatened. So for me, my level of like security and expectations of myself comes through truly diving into my own values and my own intentions. And from there, I can discuss my truth and my expression that I've found from an internal space rather than something that has been pressured on me. So I think that comes through just like a wide range of reading and understanding and like knowledge that like there are so many different ways to live in this world, and that the most common doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do that either. And
it's almost the opposite.
Yeah, I think it's almost the opposite. The thing that is common, while it might feel safe or while it might feel scary to step away from, it's sometimes the most fulfilling and the most rewarding because you've come to these reasons on your own and they've survived like scrutiny under your own values. and intentions. You can reason with yourself as to why you don't want to do a 9-to-5 job. Like, why do you want to have your own business? Why do you want to be a content creator? Why do you want to do something slightly outside of the norm? Like, where does that come from? And usually it comes from a bigger trust in oneself to achieve what is necessary.
What would you tell someone who didn't have the belief in themselves?
I think that it's getting easier to believe it because the world is changing and technology is changing. And we can really see that new jobs spark up every year. There's things that are created this year that weren't around last year. That flexibility and going after something that's not concrete doesn't mean that it's not as good. In some places, it means it's better because there's more opportunity there. There's more opportunity to grow and make a new type of career.
So it's not as hard as you think.
I think it comes with self-love and self-trust and questioning your wants and desires. Getting to the bottom of your truth of what you actually want to do on this earth is like really important for establishing the type of career and the type of life that you want. I think you really have to get to the base of it to understand what that career looks like and then how you can start creating it or what the steps like look like for that. But I also think it just comes from comparing what you've done and what you know to comparing like what you want and understanding like what it's going to take and what it's going to look like and the core of how you want to live.
People get discouraged by that though, because they feel like where they are is so far away from where they want to be that it's almost impossible to get there.
I think that now is the best time for it though, because you can educate yourself on any topic. You can become a skilled professional in any realm like so quickly through YouTube, through online education. During this age, you can learn a lot online and you can learn so many skills and you can really become a business or have a shop or have something so easily, but it's so scary because it's not clear. It's not as clear as like going and getting a degree because it's more like formatted for you. Like you attend a lecture like 4 times a week and like it's not like that. And I think that's really the scary part. You need a lot more self-management to build the skills that you want in the desired job that you want. But I think it's worth it if you want to get your dream job. Yeah, you just got to weigh up what seems right for you and where your values are and like the core of it, what you want to bring people or what you want to do. And I think that's the thing that's the hardest as well, is taking ownership over your choices and deciding that like you have full control over every decision that you have. Because it's a lot of responsibility, but it's also the responsibility that gives you freedom and gives you choice and gives you the strength to do anything that you want.
But that also means taking responsibility for all the stuff that happened to you that wasn't good. And the things you feel like happened to you and that it wasn't your fault. Like there is always 2 sides to an event. It's like what happened outside of you and what you did to get yourself in that situation or make something happen.
What's an example of this?
If you're extremely overweight and you have peddled the story that it's your genetics and you don't have control over it because perhaps you had an injury, you blame it on something that's outside of your control.
I think it just comes down to, are you being honest with yourself? Are you creating excuses for being in the routine that you are in currently? And is that really what you want to be in? Or do you actually want to change it? Because with any decision, you have to decide whether you're okay with your current position or whether you want something different. And if you want something different, it means you need to find excuses on the other side. Like, you need to find reasons to do it, reasons to get in shape.
I don't think people want their lives to be not what they want. Like, I'm sure everyone has parts of their lives and themselves that they're not happy with and they want it to be different, but they're either addicted to the negative cycle that they're in and it's difficult to change because they're stuck in the same loop. Or they just don't believe it's possible to change because, they haven't seen it, or they haven't built up enough self-respect or discipline to prove to themselves they've done these things before so you can take the next step.
What's like the first step in giving them self-discipline and like respect and taking the first step to change their behaviour?
Taking responsibility for everything. Because you can't really go anywhere if you don't have control over you don't have to have full control, but you have to understand that you do have control if you choose to. And that's the same as belief. Like, just coming to that understanding, like, you are where you are because of the decisions you've made. And it's not about what happens to you, it's about how you react.
What you choose to do with the situation in front of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is really the key thing, is having responsibility over yourself and understanding that it can change and that if you want to, you can make the change. It's hard to come to terms though when you're battling your whole body trying to tell you, because it's easier to stay in the same routine than change your mindset or change the way that your brain is responding to the same thoughts. It's a lot easier.
I think that's something people kind of misunderstand as well, as like, it's not like it's going to be hard. It's not meant to be easy. Like, the very nature of going against something means there's going to be resistance. And as soon as they start something new and it starts to get hard, they go, oh, fuck, and stop, as if something is going wrong.
Yeah.
But as soon as you encounter the resistance, that is the new ground. Like, you're going in the right direction. So it's not something you need to run away from. It's something that you need to run after.
Even like with starting this podcast, the fear that I had to do it because I wanted to do it so badly. And I had this fear of, what if it's not good enough? I can't do it. I'm going to have to edit. I'm going to have to like learn all these new skills. It seems too hard. I'm fearful. But that fear was there, and this kind of almost was there to accomplish, to get over, to have a hurdle in order to show myself that I can do it and I can set myself even higher goals and higher achievements. But that's not something that I needed to think about in that moment. I just needed to think of, okay, I have this big fear towards this one thing. That means like I care a lot about this and I need to step into that rather than run away from it. Sometimes fear is there because it's something uncomfortable that we need to move through.
Some things that make the step easier mentally for me is just thinking about two things, and it's kind of just zooming out essentially. But the first way I kind of think of it is, in 300 years, when I'm dead and when everyone I know is dead, everything in my life will have been forgotten. And so whatever people think of me now about what I did do or what I didn't do will be so insignificant and irrelevant. You might as well just do what you want anyway. Like, I said this on an episode ages ago, but the Queen was one of the most prominent figures in modern history. And who has thought about her since she died? When was the last time you thought about her since she died?
When was the last time the media brought her up?
And so I can almost guarantee that you're not as prominent as a figure in society as the Queen, by a long shot. So you don't need to worry about people's opinions, because everyone's going to forget in 10 minutes anyway. The next thing's going to come by and everyone's going to move on to that thing and you will be forgotten.
Yeah.
And you can look at that in a pessimistic way. It's like, well, what's the point of doing anything? Or you can just see that as an opportunity to do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Freely.
I know I have tendencies still, and I think it's all pretty normal to think about how other people perceive you. But my main goal is how I perceive me. And if I'm living in accordance to my values and to the things that I want to achieve. And if I'm doing that, I feel really, really good. And it pushes away those negative thoughts and those expectations of other people's views or how they might have it. But the other thing is, you don't know unless you even ask them. You're creating assumptions based on your own interpretation of them, which is, you're only getting, like, think about how many thoughts you have in your brain a day. Like, you're only getting a couple words out of somebody and you're spinning a whole assumption and a whole thought of theirs towards you that most likely it's false, or that there's other components to it as well. And that's the only way I've found to truly enjoy myself and enjoy the things that I do, is if I'm doing things in accordance with my intentions and values and my mission.
I think we all just get caught up into thinking we're the center of the universe. When everyone else is their own center of the universe and no one gives a fuck about you. And to like make decisions on your life based off what someone else thinks about you from such a removed perspective is just like bananas. It's like asking a monkey what you should do. You know?
Yeah.
You struggle to make the right decisions for yourself. How can you expect someone else to make the right decisions for you? Like, you're the only one who's lived every second in your shoes. You would know the best what is for you.
Yeah.
And everyone else is eons away from that.
So how would you deal then with somebody confronting you with expectations they have compared to yours?
At this point in my life, like, I don't feed into it at all. Because for so long, I've like drilled into my head over and over again that if I was in their shoes and had lived their life, I would think the same thing. Like, from their perspective, I understand their perspective. And understanding where they come from, you can sort of see how much they really understand you as a person, and you sort of realize how far detached they are, and that what they say has no bearing because they don't really understand what's going on.
And the level that they perceive you and understand you is only a small minority of the whole of you.
Yeah. But at the same time, they might be telling you what they think is best for you because it would be best for them. Like, it's coming from a place of love most of the time.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, they're trying to give you the advice that they need. And really, when you think about it, like, they're just projecting themselves onto you. And it's nothing to do with what you're doing at all. It's how they feel about themselves. That's hate, and that's like advice, opinions, it's everything.
Yeah. Their opinions are based on their experiences and what they've perceived, and that might be helpful for them. And maybe it'll be helpful for you too, but knowing that it's only talking to a slice of you.
Well, yeah, you just need to understand that dynamic. And then you can view it more objectively. Like there are times you're going to slip up and stuff, but
Yeah.
you can approach it with a more level head and take the pieces that you do want to try and you can leave the rest.
Yeah. I think society's expectations are really just like averages. They're literally just projections of averages. And like with having kids, people go, oh, you should have kids before you're 30. Like that's an average, really. And like in Australia, that's like an average. And then like with the type of career, like people are always pushing their average on to you because it's the most comfortable to sit with, because it's the most known and it's the most understood. Therefore, it's the safest. It's like people with different views. So conspiracy theorists are usually a minority and usually looked down upon because there's not the numbers in belief that believe one theory.
And that's the only
another.
difference.
And that's the difference. That's the difference between like with religions or little religions compared to big ones, ones that are like more established versus ones that aren't, are looked down upon. Like it's really just like we have innate drives that push us towards big groups of people, to be in like a group dynamic. And that's the most comfortable space for humans to be in. So I think it also comes from like that evolutionary perspective of like people want you to be a part of the bigger whole. So they're going to pull you into that. And that's usually going to be the averages. It's not going to be the outliers. So if you want to have, you know, if you want to adopt a kid when you're 50, that's usually a bit of an outlier. If you don't want to get married, that's another outlier. If you want to have a career as a musician, that's an outlier. Like they're not as popular things because they're less understood and they're less known and they're less done. And it's more intimidating for society.
Yeah. As the spheres get bigger, the average gets lower. Like the standard, I feel like.
What do you mean?
Like you're sort of ruled by the weakest link, in the fact that like the bigger the group gets, the more popular opinion is a lot of the time not the right opinion based off facts and things of that nature. It's just the most popular.
Usually, like with theories that we accept, with scientific theories, the simplest theory always prevails. Like we grasp onto simple explanations because we want to look for the simplest explanation. Like
Simplest to us.
yeah.
It's just whatever we believe to be true, whatever fits our biased perspective on the world. It's whatever fits our worldview. That's like what dogma is.
Yeah, it's Occam's theory that the simplest is the best.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think if you are going against the grain in any kind of expectation or social norm or cultural norm, then I think it's important to really get to the bottom of why and why you don't want to take the average. And then you can feel more solid and solidified in your decision because you know what's at the core of it. And therefore outside opinions and injection doesn't affect you or sway you as much because you have more strength in your foundations, in your reasons for why and your intentions and your values. And you can explain that. Or you don't have to. That's the other thing. It's like if you can weigh up against whether an explanation is the best or whether just leaving it and nodding and smile is the best, because sometimes the people that you talk to aren't going to get it no matter how much you say.
It's not hard to get to the core of things either. Like, I feel like sometimes we say that and it could be like, oh, damn, I need to go soul searching for like 6 hours just to figure out who I am and what I like. But it like, for me, it's very simple. It's just like, do I like it? Yes. Do I like it more often than I don't like it? Yes. Why is that? Well, there's a couple of reasons, and that's really all I need to know.
So maybe explain what's your decision behind a career in music.
Because I enjoy it.
And how does it achieve your mission or your values? Like what's behind it?
Well, I think anything that you enjoy aligns with your goals. Like you're talking about the super ego. Like that's who you are, just
that's your morals.
what you like is in line with your morals. Like you can make anything your passion. Specifically for me, like music is to be able to create something and share an experience or an emotion or inspire someone or to make them reflect or share parts of myself, connection, bring people together, But you could do that if you're a chef, cooking,
if you want to own your own restaurant and be a chef.
You don't even have to own your own restaurant. Like, I think the idea that you have to really go against the grain to do anything crazy. Like, you could be, Andy Frisella says this all the time, like, the world needs fry cooks. But if that is what you want and you're happy doing that, then that's good.
Yeah.
But, like, do you want to be a fry cook or do you want to be the best fry cook that you want to be? And it's just being the best version of yourself, and that's how you find fulfillment. And you don't need to explain that to anyone else.
I think as well, like, you can follow it and you can try. Like, it doesn't mean if you make one decision and you go for it and it's not right, like, that means that wasn't a great decision and you should applaud yourself for going and trying that one thing. Means then try the next thing. Because, like, it's also, you can find your passion and your purpose through trying things, and it'll bring you closer to your goal. If you don't try anything, then it's going to be really hard to find the one thing that you're really passionate about and bring that to fruition, because you're not trying and you're not failing. Because for the longest time, I was like, with doing anything, I was like, I want to do it really well or not at all. And I was so scared of failing. And, like, I still have a bit of an issue with, like, expectation and failing or not doing as good as I thought. But now I think about all the learning that I've done through just creating and expressing and making and trying, because through trying you show yourself, like, the strength that you have in, like, resilience, that you keep getting back up and you keep improving, and it's a cycle of, like, try something, do it, and then do it, like, just keep doing it again and again and again. And you learn so much through that, because you realize how you can get better, and that you realize your dedication in continuing this search for your passion or search for making, like, anything that you want to do, making it better and better. That's the win.
I think I use expectation backwards to a lot of people. Like, I think people have expectations of things before it happens, but have no expectations until I start something, and then I build it up behind me as motivation. Like I start something, and it really helps because there's no resistance. You just go in and you start, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. And then once you've started, you can start to raise expectation a little bit to push you a little bit further down the line. And then when you get there, you can raise a little bit more, and then you push it further, and you raise a little bit more, and you push it further.
Yeah.
But I think people raise it up before they even start, and then they just can't get going.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, even like the podcast and like with editing and putting even like time pressure and being like, hey, it's going to take this long. And then like you've reached so many knocks before you even achieve the one level, and you keep creating more things to reach and more expectations, like even breaking it down further and further, and you go, okay, this is how the editing's going to be, this is how the intro is going to be, this is how the topics are going to be, this is how I'm going to bring things up. Once you create all these expectations and these things, the task in front of you then seems like it's just, you know, quadrupled in size.
Yeah.
And really a big thing I've learned from you is you just go in and you have a plan, you have a rough thing, but like you just need to start, because you can get really
You really only need a
bogged down.
reason why you want to do it, and that's it. Like I think people plan too much. Like 90% of my life is not planned at all. I just go, and then I plan as I go. And
It
like
can hinder. It can help, but it can also really hinder.
it depends what type of person you are as well. Like the way I do it isn't the best way for everyone to do it, but you just need to find the balance for yourself.
But you do have structure. You don't necessarily have plan, but you have structure.
I have expectation.
Yeah.
So
And you have intentions.
I've got to the point now where, so in the beginning, I just did stuff with no real direction or anything. And then I found that I liked this a little bit more. So I did that a little bit more. And then eventually I was doing it more and more and more. And I was building the expectation up behind me as I was getting better, as I was enjoying it more. And then you start meeting other people that like it, and you start to build a community. And then all of a sudden, like, you've got massive momentum in this one direction. And then from the outside in, it looks like, damn, they got it all figured out. Like they know what they're doing with their life. When we all start at the same spot. And like along the way, there's doubt always as well. But yeah, if you just understand like going from 0 to 1 is the hardest step, like just starting the momentum. If you just understand that enough to take the first step, then you'll figure the rest out later.
Yeah. And the thing is, you just learn so much from constant like repetition and practice and doing it again and again and again. And your learning really comes from that. And you can only get better that way. And you will get better because you're constantly doing it more and more. You have more reflection
Yeah.
and greater insight, greater knowledge, greater skill.
Like, what's the hardest part about doing a workout?
Starting it.
What's the hardest part about getting in a cold shower?
Starting it.
What's the hardest part about having a difficult conversation?
Starting it.
So,
Yeah.
like, just start, you know? That is the hump.
That is the hump.
And it's not going to be easy after that, but once you're moving, it's a lot easier to keep moving.
You build your own momentum.
Exactly. Yeah. Most powerful force in the universe.
A ball rolling down a hill. Okay, well, I think we're going to leave it at that today. Thank you so much. Do you have anything else to say?
I think that was pretty good. Fuck everyone. That's what I say. I think that's like what we were just saying, like going from 0 to 1. Like to do that, there is a level of not fuck everyone, but you gotta completely detach to a point to get yourself started if you feel like you're being held in a spot. It helps for me anyway. Like if I feel like I'm weighed down by people's expectations, I just completely let go of them for like 5 minutes just to start going. And then I can go back if I feel like I want to. But most of the time I don't.
Yeah.
because they don't know. Yeah. And that's that. What do you think?
I just think, that people only know what's really on the surface and what you've expressed. And you only know that of them as well. And that a lot of pain comes through assumption, and that speaking your truth will always help, even if it's scary, and doing the things that you really want to, that are true for you.
Just speaking it to yourself. You don't even have to say it to anyone else.
Yeah. Just knowing it and having it really solid within you is really helpful. And realizing that really we're all mortal, and do what you want. You're here to live your life, not their life. So you do you, boo.
All right.
All right. Hope you've enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.